So today we're going to talk about paranormal romance. So I have done paranormal romance like recommendation videos before, I think several years ago. But today I kind of wanted to talk about it as a subgenre of romance. So paranormal is also called PNR a lot lately. I feel like it's kind of getting like a resurgence, at least on like the booktube community. I think paranormal is like, if you didn't, so I've talked about this in the past in romance videos, that I kind of have always classified romance as having three main big subgenres, and those being historical, contemporary, and paranormal. And then you have further breakdowns of like subgenres and tropes underneath those. Although like I feel like romance has continued to evolve and grow and just become more diverse, that maybe my three categories is not accurate. So whatever. But for paranormal, like to me, when I'm classifying things I put under paranormal are your traditional paranormal elements, your vampires, werewolves, shifters of other kinds, demons, ghosts. But I also tend to classify fantasy romance and sci-fi romance under paranormal. Do other people do that, or should those be their own? I just feel like sci-fi romance especially is such a small category that like, is it its own? Fantasy romance is definitely growing, I think, especially with indie pub, so that I can definitely see going separate. But I feel like a lot of times you have fairies and werewolves and vampires, so it becomes this like, where do you draw the line? Like where? But anyways, so paranormal romance I feel like is the one that has had the most like ups and downs when it comes to general popularity. Now obviously with self-publishing and indie publishing, there's a lot of like variety and changes, and people can publish whatever they want instead of being beholden to publishing houses. But I think that like in the early 2000s, paranormal was really popular, and then it kind of started to die out after Twilight, which I know is not a adult romance novel, I'm aware, but I do think it had an impact on the adult romance paranormal genre. So an important thing to remember about paranormal romance is it's paranormal romance. The romance is still key. Like, it is still crucial that the romance plot line be your primary focus. Otherwise, it's not a paranormal romance. It could be a paranormal, it could be a fantasy, it could be a million things, but not a romance. We'll talk more about what I mean by that. A lot of times, what you'll see in paranormal romance is that there will be some sort of like suspense element, in addition to having, like, it's not just like a romance with a vampire. I mean, that happens, like, that happens. But a lot of times they have a suspense element to them. I also find, in my experience, there to be more series that follow the same couple in paranormal romance than I find in other subgenres, instead of companion stories. And I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's just the books I read. I don't know. Let me know if you feel that that's the case as well. Yeah, paranormal romance really just has some sort of supernatural, paranormal element with a strong main romance plot line. So some recommendations. I honestly feel like I don't read a ton of paranormal romance. And when I do read it, I tend to read the same authors. So I'm not the best source for recommendations, but I'll give you some. So a few of the ones that I've read in the past and really enjoyed have been Janine Frost. I really like her books. I've read almost everything she has written. Her main books is the Night Huntress or Cat and Bone series, and then a lot of her books are spin-offs from that, and those are vampire romances. They also have within them characters. There's demons, ghouls, there's some witchcraft and everything, but it's mainly vampires. J.R. Ward, although sometimes I struggle to put her books in the romance category, especially like as Black Dagger Brotherhood has continued on. If you're still reading Black Dagger Brotherhood, let me know if you think there's still romances, or if she's shifted more into like maybe an urban fantasy type of storytelling. But that's like my perception. But I do really like early Black Dagger Brotherhood, like Lover Awakened, Lover Eternal. They're amazing. Beautiful, beautiful stories. Another author that I've really enjoyed is Cressley Cole. Her Immortals After Dark series is incredibly popular. It has a lot of vampires, there's demons, there's a lot of different type of supernatural characters in that world, and I really enjoy it. Also, Gina Showalter, I've read her Lords of the Underworld series. I think I've done a video talking about that series before. It's about these like men, I guess you kind of say, who have demons who represent like sins, so like wrath, promiscuity, lies, other things escape me, inhabiting them because of a mistake that they made like centuries or millennia ago, and they're trying to like right their wrongs but also falling in love along the way. And you have harpies in there, which that's always fun, I guess, you know. So I do really like those as well, although I haven't read them in a few years. And then some authors that I know do PNR, but I have not read their books, are Nalini Singh, like her Side Changeling series. I actually do own the first book, but I haven't read it yet. I know those are incredibly popular, like all of her books are. And I know Talia Hibbert, who's pretty popular for her contemporary. I have one up there somewhere. She has written some paranormal as well. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else off the top of my head. I can't remember, but I'll leave some links down below with some more recommendations. And I do briefly want to address something that I said earlier, where there's a difference between paranormal romance and like other things that have romantic elements. So your urban fantasy, for example. So something that I would think might get confusing sometimes is something like The Parasol Protectorate by Gail Carriger, which I love, by the way. I think it's an amazing series and I highly recommend it. Like, Alexia is amazing. There is a romance throughout this whole series, but I would never classify these books as romance novels. The romance is not the main storyline. It is a B or C plot throughout the whole series. Versus, instead, it's mainly a steampunk, like mystery suspense kind of a book, I feel like, to me, personally. So I wouldn't consider that a romance, because the romance isn't the primary storyline. I hope by saying, like, specifically, like, this one series, hopefully that'll, like, make sense what I mean between the two. Does anything I ever say make sense? Murphy, do I ever make sense? I think he's saying no. Well, sorry. But yes, I'll leave some recommendation links down below. I'll also leave some links to some more information about what paranormal romance is. I think it is probably the like subgenre that's the hardest to classify. But yes, I think Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers likes paranormal. She has done a few videos on paranormal recommendations, so check her out as well. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!